Really excited. We like to kick it off with the Storm Prediction Center updates every year. And we're fortunate to have Matt Elliott from SPC. He's a warning coordination meteorologist, join us to give us some updates on what's going on at SPC and some new things for us in the field, some refreshers as well. So thanks so much for joining us, Matt. Really appreciate you coming on today. And we'll go ahead and turn it over to you. I can see your slide deck just fine, so take it away. Thank you.
Great, I was muted. Thank you so much, and I'm so glad to be here. And of course, it just switched over again. Why did it do that? Don't know why. Let me try to see if I can figure out why it did that. This is not showing anything. Is that true?
That's correct.
It keeps flipping back. Let me turn my camera off, maybe because it keeps flipping back to my camera. So let me see if I do. If I get rid of the camera, will it stay on that?
That looks good on this end.
Seems like it. Okay, sorry. So I may have to leave my camera off because I'm on a little laptop here, and every time I had the camera on, it would just go right back away from slideshow. So
okay,
anyway,
no worries.
Again, I'm Matt Elliott. I'm the warning coordination meteorologist here at the Storm Prediction Center. I started my weather service career actually back at the Warning Decision Training Branch as a contractor. I did some AWIPS fundamentals and MRMS training, so you might have seen me a long time ago back on those types of projects. And then I got my federal position, my first federal position, working as a forecaster at the Baltimore, Washington Weather Forecast Office. It's an intern there and a general forecaster there. So it was my home office actually. I'm from the DC area, so certainly it was an amazing experience, and I really miss that a lot, honestly. Been to SPC since 2017, started off as a techniques development meteorologist, and then became the warning coordination meteorologist here in 2021. So as we know, it's certainly already expecting it's been very busy, especially across portions of the southern region, but even in the central region already, much of this cool season, and certainly expecting an active next couple of weeks. So certainly it's a good opportunity to have a chance to talk here. And so there's the button here. Just kind of go over a couple of bit about today's topics. You can see there on the top left. But I think if you haven't been to the Storm Prediction Center, it's always good to peek into operations areas. I really like to look around both the WFOs, but like NASA operations areas, just operations centers, to see how it is and see what it's like on the operations floor. How are they set up? And you can see there kind of a peek into our operations area here at the National Weather Center in Norman, Oklahoma. The lead forecaster always sits in that desk, so every watch that's issued is issued from that desk right there. That's John Hart sitting there. He has our longest tenured forecaster. He's been here for 30 years as a forecaster and been a lead forecaster here for 20 years. I also really like to show the graphic on the right. It shows our forecaster staff geography. I think what's really important is the numbers in red. I think as a national forecast center, it's really important that you have a diverse group of forecasters and individuals working from all over, have experience working across the country in all different types of climatological regimes. Of course, we also do fire weather, so having people in the West, people in places where you get maybe marginally severe weather, but also the high impact severe weather, so that when you're on shift, you always have somebody who can pull from that kind of experience. That's a really important thing, I think, and I hope you can value that certainly locally. But of course, also for universities as well, large and small, it's certainly anything here. I think we had this conversation last year at the exact same time. It was late March, and we were talking about how we were starting to become more aggressive in the long range, partly for lots of different reasons. It was kind of the culminations of several things. A, we were hearing it from you that you wanted us to be more aggressive for your partners in the extended. But B, we were also getting guidance that was getting much better in the extended, which allows you to be more confident in drawing areas and not having to worry about them shifting around or disappearing entirely. But both those things and several others coming together really allowed for us to kind of hit the extended much harder in 2022 than we had ever done in the past. And 2022 wasn't certainly the busiest year by any means. So really it shows that we were really reaching into those extended areas. And so this is the day 4 through 8. You can see on the bottom there that each kind of thing is separated by day, This is just showing greater than 15% probabilities. And the blue little bar is from 2015, and then you go to the right, it's 2023. Of course, 2023 is only through the 28th of March. But you can see 2022, days 4 all the way up through day 7, just a significant increase in the number of outlooks that were being issued, and just highlighted for greater than 15%. So we're reaching into those areas much further in time. But it doesn't just stop with the 15% areas. You see that also with the 30%. And I think that's something that really is something it's a really significant increase here, because that's showing again that you have a significant confidence that you're going to have severe weather on the day 4 through day 5 time frame. Generally, a 30% is going to either translate to an enhanced or a moderate risk. So we're talking about really the bigger end events. Of course, by you get to the day 6, day 7 time frame, you're not going to have as much confidence in drawing a 30% area, and so you don't see that change that you do in the day 4 and 5. So I made these graphics actually yesterday, and I think it's a really interesting, and it's certainly already in 2023 we're off to the exact same pace as we were in 2022. But it is important to keep in mind that not all events are the same. So on the left is the November 29th event, and on the right is the December 13th event. Both of them had a day 7 15% area. The one on the left, you can see we had more confidence, and by day 5 we have a 30% in, and then it ends up being a moderate area. But if you look, the day 7 area is not where the moderate area was. In fact, the day 7 area ends up being largely out of largely being out of the risk area. So certainly you have some shifting in the area, but in the end, a higher confidence in coverage of severe weather. Whereas on the right, you have actually the enhanced probabilities showing up sooner on day 6, but you have confidence in severe weather, but it never reaches a coverage threshold that where you expect it to be higher. So while in the past, you used to see that 30 on the day 6, the day 5, and you used to think, oh, the outbreak is coming because we're highlighting a day, day 6, 30% area. That's not necessarily the case. Again, we're just trying to, at this point, highlight areas that are really favorable for severe weather. And are we going to get severe weather? Then let's highlight an area so that we can pass it to our partners. And then we can build up to the risk and the higher coverage risk as we get closer to the event. So that is somewhat of a change in messaging to our partners. We must make sure that make that clear that when they see these, it doesn't necessarily mean outbreak on those extended outlooks. So please, let's keep messaging that there is still some uncertainty in these longer range outlooks beyond day 3 certainly. Of course, I always want to hit on our internal web page. We have some new adjustments, new additions this year as well that I'll kind of touch on a little bit here. But there's just some great things I think that you can really help. If they're useful for you, they can really help operations. All the ones on the top 3 on the left, on the right there, I actually developed when I was a techniques development meteorologist here. So please, any hate mail or suggestions, please send them to me. I made them for you guys, and I really want them to be useful for you. So whatever you think could help, just let me know. Watch status graphics. I'm not going to dwell on these. We've talked about them for several years, but really they're very helpful to just as guidance. Again, they're just guidance. That if you're busy on a shift, you might be understaffed on a shift with severe going on, that they're guidance that SPC is forecasters looking at the watch and saying, well, we think the severe threat is ended, so you can go ahead and clear those counties. And that certainly maybe can help in certain situations. And that should replace the need to chat or phone call. So you don't even have to worry about doing those types of things. And of course, any local extensions, please coordinate those, not just with your local, the surrounding offices, but with us too. Maybe we're thinking of a new watch that's going to include your counties and other counties. I think it's always best. Sometimes WFOs get left in watches because you've extended and they forgot to cancel. So it's just great to coordinate these things before making any decisions locally. Of course, we have an Outlook preview graphic, and I want to stress here that this is really for informational purposes only. There are times when it comes out more than 10 minutes prior to the Outlook, just to give you that advanced notice of kind of where the area is going to be. But really, the collaboration should be occurring in the collaboration window and based on the previous Outlook. That's what our forecaster is coming in doing. He's looking at the previous outlook. He's not just starting from scratch and saying, well, this is what I think. He takes the previous outlook and then works with that. So that's what we should all be doing, is using the previous outlook and then collaborating that in the collaboration window period. Because it's just too late. You know, I've been there, I've written AFDs, and you can't change your AFD and your grids at the last 10 minutes. It's impossible. You can't just change your writing. You've already written everything for it. So let's do the collaboration in the collaboration window. I think we'll all be happier and have a better product for all of us. I think this is an important thing for the future. And I think I showed this last year as well, but it's really something that I think we need to continue to stress and continue to push further. And that's the idea of what's missing from the severe weather outlooks. And this just shows 21 days back in July, July, I think, of 2021. And it shows SPC outlooks that are going full period, 12Z to 12Z. And then the radar data and the lightning data is just looping continuously. Well, it shows that there's a lot of information that's missing, and that's the timing information. For our partners, that's not very, it's useful to know the spatial distribution and the intensity and the coverage, but not knowing when, and maybe having a subtle hint in the text, but not actually having a product to say when is very challenging. So they're obviously left to their own accord to find those, or you're left to local solutions to figure out how to do that. That might not work across WFO boundaries. And so then our partners are confused about, well, why is the timing different across CWA boundaries? But to start to do that, we must think differently about the probabilities that are going into the outlooks. And I think this should also help us with the messaging on the outlooks as well. So the one on the left there is what you're very familiar with. That's the hazard probability for wind. The legend there, it shows a discrete probability. It's 5, 15, 30, 45, etc. In reality, though, that is not the case. And I hope as scientists, and meteorologists, we can all understand and appreciate that, especially as we just think about it for a minute. If you're in the 5, but you're near the 15, like right along the line, that doesn't mean you're a 5. That means you're much closer to a 15. You're a 14 or 14.5. The graphic doesn't tell you that, though. It doesn't tell you that well at all. The graphic on the right, which is a continuous probability, certainly we could argue about the color bars. It's not perfect by any means, but what it does show is it's a much better representation of what your actual probability is at any given location. And so then the idea of changing lines 5 or 10 miles to 20 miles, it's much less important and much less needed, because you're not changing your probabilities by just a small fraction at that point. But I understand, the message on the left shows these lines and these demarcations, and we got to find ways as meteorologists to get around those and actually message the true nature of the threat. And so to build the timing guidance, you have to use the continuous probabilities. You also have to think about, how do we get to the categorical? Well, to get to the categorical, we take the science, which is on the left. That's really where the science is on the outlook. It's in the individual hazards. What does the forecaster think is going to happen with hail, wind, and tornado? The forecaster is not going to typically go in there and just say, well, I'm going to put a marginal over this and then find a way to fit the hazards in there. The categorical really helps drive the message. It combines those three things into one graphic that you can share with our partners that sums up the severe weather threat for that day. But the hazards are really where the science is. And again, they run through this prob-to-cat table and outspits the category based on whatever the highest threshold is in that particular table. So please keep that in mind when you're thinking about changes to the outlook, a few miles here or there, that it's the hazards that we have to change to make those adjustments. Of course, you run continuous probabilities through there and you get the exact same answer, and you'd hope to as well. It's giving you a lot more of the message part on the left by showing the better distribution. So where is it located? We have this timing guidance available on the internal SPC website. There's details on production there. And I welcome any office, or if Central Region wants us to come back on and talk more about the science behind the timing guidance, there is information available on the website, but we'd happy to talk more to any office as well. we've given several talks about the science of the timing guidance. But the idea here is that it provides a nationally consistent timing information for each hazard across boundaries and across regions, and that it's consistent with the SPC outlook. So the way it works is it's really using the SPC outlook to drive the magnitude and the area of the threat. And then the high resolution guidance does what it does best. It provides that timing information and that probabilistic timing information to help show you when the most likely time for severe weather is occurring. So I'm showing the May 12th derecho from last year here with the timing guidance. And I really like to pick events to show where you have this kind of bimodal timing. And so this particular event, you have early morning activity across Minnesota into Wisconsin, and then the derecho picks up in the afternoon across portions of Nebraska and into South Dakota and Minnesota. Certainly a very impactful event. This particular event was actually the most significant wind reports on record. And so certainly a very impactful event for that part of the area. There's time series graphics available for any grid point, and you can actually just put in your city you're interested in, and it'll in that search bar on the left, and it'll pick up the closest grid point to that particular city. There's lots of keyboard shortcuts. I'm hoping to make some things more visible, but if you look at the keyboard on the bottom left, there's a bunch of keyboard shortcuts to provide some different graphics that might also be helpful, like earliest time of arrival, duration of the threat, latest time of arrival, some really interesting graphics that can be really useful for local decision making. And we really welcome your feedback. There's cases back here, a couple of years, so please take a look, and all the reports are there, and the timings there, the time series are there, and let us know if you see something. We really want to make these graphics better for you. So if I click on the time series, I pull up one in here this is the nearest one to Watertown, South Dakota, and you can see what the time series graphic looked like for that particular day. Again, it's trying to highlight where the time is for these particular, kind of when is the threat starting and when is it ending, and kind of where is that peak time frame. Keep in mind though, the peak time frame might not be when the most intense is expected. Most intense might be when the coverage is less. So coverage could be the isolated supercells with potentials for sig tornadoes, whereas you get the squall line coming through later with coverage is high, with severe, but maybe not as intense. So keep that in mind. It's a great opportunity for local offices to annotate the graphic with that type of information. But in my mind, what you see here is not enough to help share with partners. It's got a grid point on there. You're going to have to, at the local level, go in there and cross that out, put Watertown in there if you want to share that. It's not really professional looking. It's good for doing analysis and all these grid points, but we got to do better for you. And so that's what we did. So we now have these time series graphics available for all the cities that are available in your Outlook graphics as well. So here's the example for Watertown. I put the verification on here for this particular day. You can see a scattering of wind reports. They were all right around that time, 6 p.m. And that tornado report just to the north was also at 6 p.m. Central Time. So you see a lot in these types of events, these synoptically driven, dynamically driven events. The time series graphics do very well. Now we see them a lot in these pulse type events. They don't do very well, as you might expect, in pulse summer type thunderstorms, where the guidance isn't going to know when best to put the timing. Again, these high impact synoptic dynamically driven events, it tends to do very well. And so I think that it can be quite useful locally for determining staffing, but also with our partners if it aligns with what you're saying locally. Obviously, don't use them if it doesn't align with what you're saying locally. So here's an example. I took the Boulder office. The website is there, and there's a QR code there to get. This is all internal, so this is all just for you. You have your own little websites for your CWA that have all the cities, again, that are in your CWA that's on the graphic. So there's just the Boulder graphic there on the right, and then the cities that they had available. Of course, there's nothing going on for them today. In fact, there's nothing going on in any of your CWAs today, so I couldn't pick something today, but that just shows you what it would look like. It's a dashboard with all the graphics. Easily see them. So what can you do with these graphics? Well, you could create something like this, which shows the most likely earliest arrival time of severe weather risk. We're hoping to have maybe a first draft type of graphic like this. It's a little messy as it comes out at the moment, but it's something you could do locally, easily with the graphics that are provided on the website to kind of help guide you in creating something like this. Also create graphics like this, where you have several different locations with the time series graphics showing the most likely earliest arrival time of severe weather risk for each of those. I've just picked slight risk being the most likely earliest time, but of course you could pick marginal, or you could pick a different threshold. And that's again what you want to key on locally, depending on your messaging for that particular day. It might depend on that day. So how did that do for the Mayfield event? Certainly, again, as you saw on the Watertown, it lines up very well. As we see in these synoptically driven events, the guidance does a very good job with the timing. So if you match the timing up with the outlook and the magnitude, you can really do a good job and provide a good service to our partners. I also want to thank everybody in Central Region for the help with the new Outlook graphics. Just an enormous thank you for your responsiveness in getting these graphics the way you like them, because that's my goal, was to get them the way you want them. And so if there are things you still want, please let me know. We're happy to try to work them in. I've made several personal accommodations for certain WFOs. So if you have a suggestion, we want to hear it. We might not be able to do it, but if we can't do it, we'll at least put it on a list so that we'll do it at some point, or try to, and create some requirements for the future. So I hope these graphics have been helpful for you, and really excited to see, and it's been awesome to see them being used locally. And I love the non-CWA borders that Central Region has gone with across the board. Also have these new outreach product graphics available on what's called the WCM page. There's a link there. Many of them hadn't been updated in 10 plus years. And I did a lot of Skywarn talks at the Sterling office when I was there, and it was frustrating to me that I was using a lot of graphics that weren't updated. And so when I came to WCM here, it was a big part of my thing was to update these graphics. So I'm really excited to bring them to you for outreach purposes. I know they're important to our partners and to us, and so I'm really happy to bring them to you. And I'm happy to say that we have the code ready to go to support them every year in the future, to have these nice graphics continually updated. Also have new MD graphics that you've probably seen. One of our forecasters developed these. It's a great move to the future. The graphics were from the 90s before. It's great to see these newer graphics. Of course, we're getting lots of feedback, and we'll try to incorporate the feedback as we can. Certainly with severe weather season starting, it's difficult. I will say though that we have lots of other graphics in the works and new updates to our graphics. A lot of things were stuck in the 90s. So I think you'll see a lot of exciting things coming over the next few years. And so what do you, just in terms of service evolution and science evolution, what do you see the next 1 to 5 years? We're continuing to work on what we call these double hatched areas. And that's really to provide these forecasts for these higher end events. How do we separate an event like the December 10th event, 2021, from just another event that has significant tornadoes potential? Or how do we separate the April 27th, 2011? How do we separate these higher end events, which April 27th may even deserve a triple hatch? How do we separate these events from the single hatched events? And I think that's where we can provide additional intensity information to our partners that we're not providing now, that will be really helpful. We're also extending the timing guidance into day 2. I know that's critical for you to be able to message to your partners. It's not enough to just have the timing guidance show up after the 6Z outlook. I know that, so I think that's going to be very helpful. We're also working closely with social scientists on ways to communicate risk through the outlooks. And so certainly there could be some changes in the future with that. And I think finally, and importantly as well for the Central Region offices, things we're working on is this MCS classification scheme. How do we better understand the derecho climatology, MCS climatology, have definitions for these things so that we can make declarative statements after these events faster. These are all things that where we want to work with you and work with everybody on as we work toward these things. The reason why we need to focus on the intensity, though, I think this graphic will hopefully sum it up for you. If you look, there's more than 90% of the tornadoes are EF0 to EF2. but 80% of them, of fatalities, are EF3 to EF5. So the majority of fatalities are occurring in the strong to violent tornadoes. And so those are the ones that we really got to make sure that we're having information in our forecast on. And right now, we do not. And so that's why we're really working on this double hashed, because we need that information to then drive these things like the quantitative IDSS. How do you pull out the historic outbreak from another kind of regional outbreak or a kind of a lesser scale, just episodic event? And how do you then say how recurrent it is and how frequent it's going to be? And then you can use things like the metadata of the societal exposure, like the hospitals, schools, what time are people in school, and run a bunch of simulations to say, okay, this is the worst case, best case scenario, threats to society. And that could be really useful for our partners as we kind of go through the event and work through the event ahead of the event. So really, this is the wave of the future as we move from IDSS into this quantitative IDSS. How do we quantify the recurrence and the intensity? Of course, we always have challenges, right? And I think I've been talking to lots of WFOs the past few months, and really, I think it's everywhere. Whether it's the the collaborative QPF, whether it's collaborating with your neighboring offices, whether it's collaborating with SPC, WPC, Hurricane Center, IDSS and consistency is driving unprecedented amount of requests to collaborate, and it's a challenge for all of us. But it's an important thing, and we got to find ways to work through it in the best as we can. And so we're certainly open here to the best ways we can do that as well. We also got to understand that SPC risk categories are a function of the probabilistic risk assessment, the coverage and lesser extent intensity. So really, it's the science going into the message. So how do we make these adjustments to the message of the hazards that maybe you don't need to message the lines as much? Of course, you have variations between WFOs on the severe storm forecasting warning philosophy, report gathering philosophy. I mean, I worked at the Sterling office, and we had very different philosophies than our surrounding offices on these types of things. And as a national center, that can be a challenge to corral everybody's philosophy. And that's what we're here to do, though. So we got to find ways to do it. So of course, we always want to hear things. If you differ from us, let's hear it. Let's talk about it. Meteorological perspectives, we want to talk about it. This is what we do. We love to talk about severe weather. So please, let's talk about it. And if you do, if you're going to coordinate with your surrounding WFOs, that's always going to be helpful as you kind of approach these events. Working and then coming with a kind of a consensus is always going to be helpful. And I think the biggest thing is working together with effective collaboration. We can improve the final product, and that's important for all of us. You know, we know you're messaging the product locally, so it is important for all of us to have the best product. And I'm not gonna go through these Outlook collaboration windows, but they're here available for you after to look at. I added the fire weather outlooks for this year, as well as this graphic in case your forecasters want to do fire weather collaboration as well. And with that, I'll take any questions. I do want to mention that we've done lots of WFO talks recently. Bill or I would be happy to do a talk with your office. We'd also be happy to welcome your staff here. We recently had WFO ILX 4 forecasters come shadow our office here, and so we would love to do that or come visit you as well. So please reach out to Bill or I if you're interested in those types of opportunities. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much, Matt. Really great presentation. Appreciate all of the updates. A couple of questions have come in. One I'm going to read off here. Between the watch graphics when sent by SPC versus the WFO, our media partners have commented on these color differences. Let me go back, I missed a part. Has there been any discussion with the color inconsistencies between the watch graphics when sent by SPC versus the WFO? Media partners have commented on these color differences, and we are trying to figure out how to resolve it.
That's a great question. I assume you might be referring to the official watch graphics that go out from us, because we actually are the ones that we do for social media now use the same color scheme as the central region graphics do, the yellow for a watch. So it just has a blue outline or a red outline for the watch. We are gonna, I agree, we got to figure a way to reconcile these color differences as well. Some of those legacy products that go out, the official ones, we don't have changed, but we need to work on that. Right. Our hope is, though, is that we can transition to just auto posting the newer ones that would then align with the same color scheme.
Okay, great. Another question, has there been any discussion about releasing the convective outlook preview at the beginning of the appropriate collaboration window? This may be helpful for collaboration purposes and in the spirit of a collaborative forecast process.
I mean, I think if things could be perfect, I think that would be ideal. But the issue with that is the forecaster often doesn't know early enough. They're still gathering all the information, and part of that information is the collaboration window, is listening to you talking about things, and so they're not going to have an outlook drawn at that time, and that's really the challenge. It's just too early to have something on paper that's going to be meaningful to collaborate on. And I think it's just easier to use the previous outlook because, again, that's what that forecaster is using. He's using that to collaborate and use, on his own to reconcile what he's going to do and change.
Okay, and there was kind of a follow-up or a related question that gathered from what you said about the convective outlook preview that the product really isn't that useful. Thus, what is its real purpose?
Yeah, so I see its usefulness as being able to quickly make a message change and know where your area is. And so that's what I see it as. Is say you're at the WFO and there's 10 minutes prior to the outlook. Well, you're generally going to be getting ready to draw up your messaging for things, whether the graphics are coming out, things like that. It takes 10 minutes at least to try to change your whole idea of what you're going to do. If your area is changing, your things are changing, it's about writing your things on your graphic. Okay, here's where the area is. It's giving you that few minutes. Again, you don't need much, hopefully. It's trying to give you so that when Outlook comes out, you don't have to take 10 or 15 minutes to do it. You can be the first one to do it. That's the idea.
Okay. Yeah, perfect. I'm going to ask one more question.
And that you know before anybody, before any of your partners. You don't have to worry that your internet's slow and it's not coming through the public web page fast enough. You know what's coming before anybody.
Right. Yeah. That makes perfect sense. And then, like you said, you can get a jump on updating your messaging and that sort of thing if needed. Last question for you, Matt. When is double day 3 outlook coming? Like a day shift day 3? Is there any hope of getting 2 a day?
Yeah, part of that is staffing here. I would say, and I think it's surprising to many, we are the smallest INSEP center. We only have 22 forecasters here. So we're about the size of many WFOs. We're doing the same thing here as you guys are doing. So that's part of the challenge is having the day 3, but we understand how important it is to our partners. And so trying to fit it in and trying to get it in it's really critical. So we understand that, and we're trying to make it happen.
Great, Matt. I just had a couple of comments. I just wanted to, it's really nice to see the more aggressive approach in days 4 to 8. Anecdotally, I think that was certainly noticed, but it was really interesting to see the numbers that you displayed there. That's great. And I know for next Tuesday, we already have a risk area out for that event, a potential event. So I really appreciate that. And also love the update on the outreach graphics. But we reference those things all the time, and seeing those updated numbers is really nice to have. It's like you said, so they're not 5 years ago or something like that. People love to see it up to the most recent year. So thanks a ton, Matt, for coming on. Really appreciate it. Love working with y'all at SPC. We have a great and a strong relationship with Central Region and SPC. So always appreciate you coming on and sharing with us. So thanks, Matt.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you, everybody. Do appreciate it.